Ladies and gentlemen and skinwalkers, hello, hello. I'm really happy I got Bill and Adam here with me, my good buddies from the 13 Questions podcast. And I'm really psyched to speak with them again because they were kind enough and gracious enough to invite me onto their 13 Questions podcast. I had a great time and I look back on that recording with quite a lot of fond memories. Anyways, we have a new chapter in our installment of work together. And today I'd like to welcome them both to the Loco Listens podcast. So, as first time guests, you guys got to get the ritual first question. So, whoever wants to go first, Bill and Adam, I'm excited for you guys to introduce yourselves. But for both of you, let's think about this. When did you start to speak your truth?
Oh man, I guess I'll go first. I guess when I started on 13 questions, I did before I became the host, right? I had to go through all the questions. And I think in my episode we actually did 21 questions. So that was the first chance that I got to sit down and introspectively think and formulate concrete, quote unquote concrete answers to like say into a microphone and put it out there. So that was like really cathartic, right? And I guess that would be the genesis of how I found myself where I am now today. I mean, that was a huge opportunity coming from, no, absolutely no experience. Like we were just talking before we started on the recording that, I have no audio recording or editing or anything before starting 13 questions. So everything I know I've learned from Adam, which I guess is a good segue for his question or his answer.
Well, for me, it started off when I was young, pretty much with just the things I was interested in. Read a lot of sci-fi, really interested in Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious Universe, all the UFO specials, X-Files, In Search of, that kind of stuff just gravitated towards me. So I've always really been into ufology and the deep history that goes behind it, and understanding that, like, well, this is probably the most important thing. And I just latched on to being a believer in that and have always been, probably known as the person who, is always focused on, like, that's a core of my life. I've always just been centrally focused and thinking about that aspect. And I've always talked about it. And you see how many people are crazy or, consider it to be a crazy thought. But what I've loved about that is when you really start speaking to people about those things, everybody perceives that that's how everybody thinks, but not nearly as many people give you that bounce back. So yeah, that was really my speaking my truth, really. Um, just kind of became a thing.
Right on, gentlemen. Well, it's pretty cool. I mean, you've both brought up some interesting points, and I just like to point out really quick that the 13 questions, you guys ask the same 13 questions to each guest, and what ends up happening is you get totally unique episodes every time, and it's really fun because one, I mean, you got a really cool question about books, and you've developed this reading list on your website. By the way, you want to just let people know what is your website? Anything you want to let people know if they're not familiar with 13 questions, how they could find you guys online.
Yeah, the website's really the best place to go, and that's just 13questionspodcast.com. It's 13, like the numbers, right? Don't spell it out. 13questionspodcast.com. For some reason, there's no www in front of it to get to it. So I'm still trying to figure that out with WordPress and how all that stuff works.
Interesting. All
So
right.
yeah, but you can find the book list there. There's background on the show, and the hosts have all have bios up there, including Graham and Darren, and of course episodes and the questions. So that's the
So
best.
just to be clear too, I want to get back to this book topic, but you mentioned Graham and Darren. We're referring to the Grimerica boys. I was just curious if you wanted to explain really quick, how they are connected to this project, and maybe we can give them a nice shout out because they're uh really truly inspiring gentlemen in this community, and I think they've been really great folks just to have around to chat with, and they've put out a lot of amazing content including audiobooks and all sorts of great stuff. So from the Grimerica connection, would you guys like to speak on what that's all about?
Sure. Yeah. I ran into Graham and Darren at one of the not the first Paradigm Symposium. I want to say it was the second or third, and then, subsequent, went to a couple, three of those, and ran into them there. I met them in person before I ever even had listened to their podcast. And then just as, time went on, I ended up helping behind the scenes, doing some black budget, editing, and things like that. And then, they started the podcast 13 Questions. It was Darren's baby with a bunch of really brilliant people and friends of his, who, suggested these questions for him. And he put that together, was running the show. And that man has, so many different fires going on, and, is taking care of and tending so many things. He's like, need to transition out of this, so I moved on board, ran that for a while. And then the same thing. Bill was a listener of Grimerica show, and he can probably take over from here. But he listened to the call and came on board.
Nature sure does call, doesn't it?
Yeah, it was a Discord message that Darren had put in the chat for the show, and I had happened to be there at the right moment in time to
Nice.
catch it, and I volunteered. So,
Well, I'm happy for you guys, and I think you've been able to produce a really cool project, or at least take the reins of this awesome experience. And I think as someone who was previously in the hot seat, as you like to call it, I had an awesome time. You guys are awesome hosts, and it's not only just the 13 questions, but it's the ability for both of you to ask those follow-up questions to really dive deeper and offer your own insights. And so that's why I really love podcasting in general. It's just so you can really get to know and to learn more about someone and what they've been through. And I had mentioned earlier in the introduction, I look back on my episode with fondness because I spoke about my father a lot, and he gave me a lot of great advice. I think we recorded that back in May, maybe around like April, May, and he had since passed in October. So I kind of look back on that, like thinking about those gifts, and then being able to speak on that and share that has been really cool. And so I appreciate you guys for bringing that out of me. And I hope today that we are able to dive into a different set of questions. But I wanted to circle back to one that we kind of mentioned earlier. You guys have a cool question about books, and there's a book list on your website. So for people who are not familiar, can you tell us what is that question exactly, and what is this book archive that you guys have been creating on this website?
sure. The question is, what is the most influential book on your life and why? And so we've been keeping track of all the guest answers that we've received and putting them up on our website in list form by episode number. So it's become quite a good reading list that I've utilized. Like I just bought another book the other day. Let's go right here, The Four Agreements. So I'm using it, and it's just been a wealth of deepening learning and knowledge and information, and just all around good stuff.
Right on. Yeah, it's an awesome topic to get into because, you can talk about people's favorite movies or whatever, their favorite this and that. But, when people really invest their time into reading a full book, I mean, that's significant. So I'm glad that you guys have been able to compile that reading list. And, obviously the website will be in the show notes, but I encourage people to check out that reading list to see what they might find. And funny segue too. I've got to give a shout out to Tim Ferriss of the Tim Ferriss Show. He's put together a list of questions that I'd like to ask you guys. It's 11 questions from his book Tribe of Mentors, and this is a list of 11 questions that he asked a bunch of famous world-class performers, top chefs, athletes, entrepreneurs, etc. And there's 11 questions here that should be fun to get into. I'd love to hear what both of you think, but just want to be clear, I did not come up with these questions. These are from Tim Ferriss, but I think they're going to be really fun to dive into. And it's ironic because question number one is about books. So whoever wants to go first, the first question is, what is the book or books you've given most as a gift and why?
That's a hard one. Just
Well, I can't say gifted, but I can read the most or say the most suggested book that I've ever given out, which is The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield, I think it was. I heard
Yes.
that as a recommendation from Joe Rogan, and yeah, incredibly influential. You know, it's a wonderfully framing way of the artist's mindset and blocking. And then when you understand that, you know, mantras work, and you walk down that route, then this becomes an incredibly useful tool for just accepting creativity in and letting it flow.
Right on. Yeah. Pressfield has a great understanding of the personal muse. I think it's really fun to dive into what that could possibly mean for each of us individually. How do we tap into that fountain of creativity that's within you? And you know, this muse, like this feminine figure who is whispering brilliant ideas to us subtly. You know, that still small voice. I think it's fun to get into. So appreciate you sharing that, Adam. And Bill, what was a book or a couple books that you've given as gifts the most or suggested?
I haven't given this book out because I've just recently read it myself, but I would if given the chance. But yeah, that would be Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. That is, it sounds like a boring, like who wants to read that? Like the title just makes you sound, it makes it sound like you know, just basic. But it's Dale Carnegie. He kind of did what Napoleon Hill did in that just going around and interviewing a bunch of successful people, right, and finding out what works in the human nature and the human spirit and how people tick. And it's a book that I wish I would have read in my early 20s. I'm now mid 30s. So that would be, and even, you know, even if you are older, you're still going to get, I would think that it would be a good refresher for some things that hopefully you've already heard of growing up, like not condemning or criticizing people. And yeah, so that would be one that I would definitely suggest going forward. And if I had a bunch of extra copies around, I definitely mail them out to people I knew.
Yeah, man, that's quite a classic. And I've never read the full book cover to cover, but I've seen bits and pieces pulled out and applied like on YouTube videos and things like that. But it's really cool that you bring it up because relationships, having strong, solid, and well, relationships with strong foundations can change your entire life in obviously like romance, but in business and friendships and things like this. It's built on that mutual exchange of respect and confidence. And I really appreciate something else that you brought up too. Well, with how to win friends and influence people, I mean, influencing people can be a dark kind of trick that, when you think about manipulation and influence, it can go in either direction. But this book, from what I've seen, and I'm looking forward to reading the full book someday, is to learn more about how you could inspire someone, influence someone to do their absolute best, kind of like the muse in Pressfield's view, how to influence yourself or to influence someone else to reach for that highest potential at all.
Yeah, one of the things that he kind of emphasizes is giving the other person a fine reputation to live up to. So we're bringing in higher ideals when speaking about a specific situation. So appealing to that higher sense of truth or goodness or whatever is going to benefit the most people or the two parties in that situation. So I think that it can, I mean, it can be used to maybe a little trickery there, but um, that would be, you know, that would be more nefarious and not really the highest, you know, what he would argue for.
Yeah, the first word that comes to mind is symbiosis, and it's cool. You're creating an environment with your relationships that benefit everyone, like a mutually assured growth kind of. That's the magic, right? MAG, the mutually assured growth. That's our
Well, you can
magic.
always persuade somebody in a direction that's negative towards them or positive towards you. Or you could say, how about we persuade things in a direction that's positive for everybody?
Right.
And then, yeah, you're still being influential. Yeah, you're still maybe being greedy. But, when you start to understand that, you can do things that will make a person way more likely to answer a second question as yes or no and help you.
Hmm.
Well, that could be influential, but you could go, well, why would I also treat a person in a way when they would not want to help
Hmm.
me? So yeah, just once you understand that kind of, those aspects of the world, we can work together.
Yeah, it's crucial. Awesome. Well, the second question here, I like how you guys frame your podcast to your like question two, but I'm just gonna move on here. This has been fun so far. I think, for these 11 questions, we're gonna be able to touch on a lot of different areas of, life in general, but at the same time, I mean, just from that first question, those two books that you've already mentioned, I feel like there's a lot of, as my friends like to say, there's a lot of gravy there, and just in those two books and in those two topics and how they merge together. So let's go to question two. It says, "What purchase of $100 or less has influenced you the most, or has made a positive impact in your life in recent memory? $100 or less." Billy, you want to go first?
Yeah, this is super recent, and I know that it asks for specific brand models. So the Squatty Potty, I don't have an actual Squatty Potty, but I have this little tiny wooden bench that is like the size of a Squatty Potty. So I've just like literally in the last two days been quote unquote experimenting with that, right? So I think that that is definitely less than $100. I would hope. So
Good choice, Bill. I did not know that. Game-changing product. I bought one years and years and years ago when they came onto the market at the recommendation of one of the Grimerica guys. And I was like, $60 piece of plastic. Okay, this seems like it was a waste of money for what you're getting, but oh my God, it's been the best purchase ever.
I can second that. And when I moved from Connecticut down to Texas, I didn't bring my squatty potty with me. And I just thought about it now since you brought it up. Like maybe I should get another one, because when you have a healthy digestive system, it's kind of like the correlation, happy wife, happy life. And it's definitely your gut and your brain need to work together in that. So
yeah.
makes a lot of sense. I appreciate you saying that. And just because we're talking about poop here, quick poop joke. You have the best poop of your entire life. I call it the one wipe wonder. So let's all aspire for that. Anyways, Adam, what did you think? $100 or less?
$100 or less. I'm gonna have to go with all right. It's a product made by Color Therapy or Purple Canyon. Sorry, it's Purple Canyon. They're color therapy glasses. I suffer from migraines. So I recently started working from home here within the last 6 months. So I was like, okay, well, what can I do? And I found that, since I've been doing this, there's a lot of green products on the market, not like environmentally green, but you can see I'm actually bathed in a light here that's green. Got my window open, but that green light is, I forget the frequency, but it is a specific millimeter wave of green LED light that is used for reducing pain or causing less pain in people that have migraines. And then I also have these
Looking good, my
green color
friend.
therapy glasses that, yeah, it's amazing. When I have a really bad headache or a migraine, just to, sit down and put these on and have it literally reducing pain, decreasing my suffering. Yeah, game-changing product, and opened
Yeah.
my eyes really to the idea that, hey, you're in the forest, you're around all these frequencies. We already know that there's these terpenes in the air that are greatly beneficial to your immune system that just hover at, 3 to 6 feet, the level that we're breathing at. And also the color, could it be that I'm suffering, negative mental health effects, migraine, because I'm not bathed in the light of the forest? So yeah, it's nice being able to have that technology in my life. So yeah, definitely these glasses are like $8, and then I don't know, it was probably like $30 for 3 bulbs.
Right on. Do they also act as blue light blockers?
I do not know. I mean, they're allowing a certain frequency through, so they're probably blocking out a certain amount of blues, but they're
Interesting.
not designed specifically to block out blues.
Well, right on. Well, I'm sure, if you got a migraine and you gotta take a poop, you throw them on there, you're gonna have a very relaxing experience. But that's a really cool. I've never heard of that before. I was curious, are you guys an affiliate, or is this just something that you
No,
found and you wanted
just
to demo
found
with
on
us?
my own and started using. Yeah. No, I got Bill the purple ones. One of the themes of
Yeah,
our
yeah.
podcast is purple and green. So uh
Do you guys want to talk about that really quick? Because I decided, to get a new logo for my podcast. It's got a purple and green, not as profound, but I'm curious because I've got my own reasons for doing that. But you guys want to speak on the color scheme that you guys have decided on?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the purple, I guess I'll start there because I'm wearing the purple glasses. Is kind of a homage to Gramerica. Some of their logo work has purple in it, but also the purple is the color of royalty and sovereignty and freedom, and it corresponds with the higher chakras on top of your head. So which also deals with sovereignty, and it's just I think a cool color, and it brings to mind ideas of like I said, freedom, which I think everybody can get behind. Plus, some of my favorite gems are purple, like amethyst. We have a gratitude jar that we kind of maintain on the show, featuring tons of purple gemstones like lepidolite and calcite, pink calcite, and amethyst, and all a bunch of other stuff. But yeah, purple has just been kind of like a recurring,
Hmm.
I don't know, motif for
Before
me.
we talk about green, could you explain what the gratitude jar is? That sounds pretty cool. I know this is part of your introduction in your podcast, but what is the gratitude jar exactly?
Well, since we are value for value, anybody that wants to connect with the show can just send us an email or make a donation or whatever, and we'll take your name and put it right with purple ink. I'll write it your name or email in purple ink. I'll put it inside this 6 cup mason jar I have on a green tartan, and it's surrounded by these uh, like I was saying, purple colored gemstones. We have a green one and a blue one in there too, though. So they're not all purple, right? But these stones have certain metaphysical properties, which facilitate in creating the heart brain coherence, which is something that Adam and I like to talk about um, before we get into before when we publish the episodes, right? We record the intros after the interviews, so it's to prep everybody before delving into these kind of introspective topics to kind of think from the heart space. So connecting the heart and the brain is kind of something that these stones help to do, and in a kind of like quantum entanglement type of way, your name added to the pile, I guess, or the jar, will kind of could facilitate and helping you make that connection. So we do go over each stone in not all the intros because we don't have a stone for each episode, right? So you kind of got to go back and search through them. I will tell you that they do start on episode 98, I believe, or 99. So start from there and go forward. I think we've got probably like a dozen now, close to a dozen. I haven't counted in a while. I could do that right
Very
now.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. And Adam, tell us about the green because Bill just brought up the heart and the brain connection, the heart and the mind connection. Maybe that's a correlation as well. What do you
Yep.
think?
We have 13.
yeah, absolutely. And to dive back in, because in case anybody's interested in getting these bulbs, they're made by a company called MRP, Migraine Relief Green LED light. They're 520 nanometer green light frequency. So it's a very narrow band, but I highly recommend them out to anybody out there that is a migraine sufferer. Can't promise anything, but it did work for me to help. And it's pretty
Nice.
wild because after you put them on and you walk out into normal light, everything becomes like pinky peachy in a disorienting way. It's kind
Hmm.
of fun.
Cool. Cool. Awesome. Yeah. So did you want to speak about, because we're talking about the logo, the color spectrum. Is there anything else that we should talk about for the green color and the logo, or should we move on? What do you guys think?
Uh, Green corresponds to the heart chakra too, so that's
Mhm.
kind of where that ties into the heart brain coherence.
Brain
And
heart.
yeah,
Got it. Awesome. Well, I appreciate that. We were kind of joking earlier about I was looking at the logo. Like you guys have two different ones. You got this one with the cockpit of some kind of airplane, and then the other one has an infant or a baby, and it's cool that it's two very different themes, in flight or recently out of the womb, or something like that. It's pretty cool. And I appreciate you guys speaking on the colors, because that's something that, from a design perspective, it's really cool to consider what the deeper, perhaps esoteric meanings are. And I appreciate learning more about the gratitude jar as well. But as we move into the third question, this one is interesting. I really like this one because it's got a two-part nature. So number three is, how has a failure set you up for success? And when you think about that, do you have a favorite failure of yours? So Adam, do you want to start with that one?
Yeah. I would say it's from the perspective that it gave me. I used to work in loss prevention, and we had a significant amount of money going missing. Turned out that, or not money, product. Somewhere like we're looking at, probably grand total over 120,000 over years, but 30 to 40,000, estimated over, 4 or 5 years. No idea, thought it was outside. Working one morning, caught some good evidence on camera, glint off of glasses back when cameras weren't that good, and realized that it was somebody that we knew very well, who helped out on a lot of other cases, was, always giving us information, incredibly nice, really like a person that you would never suspect. And stopped them later that day after identifying they had a large amount of merchandise, and closed a big case. But it blew my mind because that one really shifted and changed me. And then I had a bunch of other cases of seeing, people, with their parents and, loved ones, and they had no idea that they were doing something wrong and how dumbfounded they were. And, but that event right there let me know, like, wow, not that I feel betrayed, but how did I not even conceive that this was a possibility? And after that, I jokingly say, if I caught my mother stealing, I wouldn't be surprised. Like, I would be surprised, but because at that point, nothing is surprising. And it really just opened me up into just human beings and the capability and what to always be on the lookout, to, not trust no one always, but, don't always trust yourself. You might be wrong. So I don't know. It was a beautiful perspective. So if that's a failure, um, I
Yeah,
don't know.
that's interesting because it speaks on not only being open to possibilities and human nature, but also you redirected the failure onto, not onto the perpetrator, but you directed it back onto yourself as like a way to grow, as to be like, well, how did I play a role in this happening, and how can I grow from that point? So that's interesting.
Yeah, that's my biggest continual failure through life, is just, you misjudge people,
Hmm.
and you start to see things in patterns and, repetitive things in other people. And, you get really, really good as long as you're paying attention and trying to, essentially deconstruct every person in every situation. Uh, but once you do that enough, like, you don't get upset when something happens to you that you didn't see it. You're like, I should have saw that coming. And now, next time it comes, I'm going to see it. I'm going to see it a mile away.
Hmm.
So I don't know. That's it's not that I like being portrayed or surprised, but at the end of it, I feel like I come out with a lot more tools under my belt. So if I can survive, I'm stronger for the next encounter.
Yes, you're gaining perspective for sure. All right, Bill, how has a failure set you up for a later success, or do you have a favorite failure of yours that you'd like to speak on?
Sure. I would say that I went through a divorce in my early 20s, and that is an apparent failure. And I would say that it set me up for later success because it really I got married in the Catholic Church, right? So I grew up in the Catholic Church from, you know, kindergarten all the way through high school, and then I spent some time in seminary after that. Decided that wasn't for me, but that's another story. The So I met this one young woman and we got married at a very young age, kind of rushed into it. I would say hindsight, right? But that kind of made me take a stronger look at Catholicism and my faith and my relationship to God. So that was really the kick in the butt, which kind of started the whole, well, let's dissect everything I've been told further and see what everything's actually all about.
Yeah, very nice. It's those paradigm shifting events, whether it's loss of love or the loss of stability in a belief system. While they are like very, very turbulent, they can also offer like a lot of clarity as well. So it's tough to go through that, I can imagine. But at the same time, just like Adam had spoke on, the perspective that you can gain from those types of experiences is enormously beneficial and profoundly helpful, especially when you meet someone down in the later on. You'll probably come across someone who has the same problem, and you're going to be able to help them. Maybe this goes back to the wounded healer archetype of Chiron, and that's always fun to think about how your struggles and your pains and your failures set you up to help the next person deal with that same issue or a similar issue. That's interesting. I appreciate that. Now this one's fun because when you listen to Tim Ferriss's podcast, and I don't know, do you guys ever listen to any of his interviews? Do you guys ever?
Nope, I'm not a
Somewhat
regular
familiar?
listener.
I
No.
have not, no.
Yeah, he's got a couple interesting ones. I don't tune into all of them, but usually at the end of each episode, he'll ask question number 4 as a way to like close it out. But I'm gonna go in order to honor the original list. So this is number 4. It's if you could have a gigantic billboard anywhere with anything on it, any kind of message. So it could be like one sentence or 1 or 2 words, however much you want to fit onto it. What would your billboard say? So, Bill, you want to start with that one?
Yeah, the I was reading the question a little bit before we started, and I did come across a quote that Philip K. Dick said, right? And I put it on Instagram a few days ago. But since we're talking about a billboard and it's a medium for, you know, communicating messages with it, not only images but words too, right? So I thought maybe a billboard with a quote about words would be kind of like a, I don't know, neat little put together, not synchro, but just you know what I'm saying. But
It's a
anyway,
meta billboard.
yeah, the quote is the basic tool for manipulation of reality is the manipulation of words. If you
Mm,
can control the meaning of words, you can control the people who must use the words. So this whole concept of words being used for manipulation, but words and spelling, right? We spell words, we cast spells. What we're doing right now is a spell. We're making you think about a certain thing. So this concept is just something that I think is interesting to think about and how it affects us subconsciously even too. So I think that was
awesome, man. Yeah, that reminds me of Terrence McKenna because he would speak on those same ideas a lot, and he'd be like, "The world is made of language, and if you use the right words, you can make of it whatever you want."
your
It's fun to
impression.
think about. Yeah, thank you. I'm not Irish, but I try to be sometimes. Saint Patty's Day. Well, Adam, what would you have on your billboard? What would you say?
Something like find your own magic. The idea that, the world can tell you so many things are real or what is a reality, but once you have the experiential proof, uh, dowsing rods are a good one. Get some dowsing rods or bend your own and, try it out and do it, cheat, right? Like step over a plugged in electrical cord. That's the easiest one for me. That's what blew my mind. And then I started walking around finding, just that, oh, there's an actual pipe here. There's underground electrical, but it works and you feel it. And, people can naysay all they want, but until it hits you. Remote viewing, I think, is another incredible one.
Mhm.
The amount of people that have success on that on their first time. I have a podcast that I haven't done in a while that's coming back. But we've done this, and we've done this with guests on the show that have never done it before. And when you start to realize that you can perceive things outside of your location, outside of local time, and you experience that, and now what's your view on the world? What's possible? Anything that any scientist tells you when you start to understand that distance, time, space, perception, all these things can be very slippery. So even in the face of something like an ultimate catastrophe, a cyclical disaster that is going to come and scour the earth, liquefy the ground, change the polls and, knock us down to, thousands of people. In the face of all that, what does it really mean when we can connect across time and pull through information and you can exist across these distances? Well, how far does that go? Because maybe there's something to it that's always there. And then when you start to think in those ways, yeah, it can become an incredibly magical world that you don't have to be fearful of. So simply something like find your own magic, find some experience. When you hear that voice in your head that says something and you see it, when you see the flash of something that's going to happen moments before it does, that thinking about somebody before a phone call, all these things are natural phenomenon. And if you focus on them, then you can at least believe a different reality than is the one that's being fed to you.
Right on. Well, there's two things I want to comment on. Like, one, with this Zoom call that we're on right now, I mean, it might seem mundane to most people, but this is truly magical that, this is possible now. And then you could extend that even further. And I'll tell you a quick story. I used to do an internship for this Christian publishing company called Guideposts, and they put me on this really fun project. They wanted to write a Christian version of the near-death experience stories. So they were asking me to find all the NDEs where people saw Jesus, where people saw the Holy Spirit. And it's tricky because as I started doing research, you find that based on someone's cultural lens, they would see different things. So like if a Buddhist had a near-death experience, they might see the Buddha. There's a lot that goes into that. But what I really want to comment on is after doing this really fun research, which actually led me often to the Skeptical podcast with Alex Karras. He has a lot of NDE research on there, and it was fun because you figure out eventually that people who, so like I'll give you an example. There was this woman who died, she quote unquote died temporarily and floated up above her physical body, and she was listening to this conversation that was being had between the doctors and the nurses, and they literally pronounced her dead. They wrote down her time of death and everything. So like they were already in agreement that she was gone. And then somehow she came back. She was able to tell this story with really precise detail that if she had been dead, there would have been no way she could have heard or seen any of this. I mean, her eyes were closed, so it's not like she would have been able to see certain things. So yeah, it's really fascinating. Consciousness is definitely not local to our physical body, but in the same way, it's a topic that we could each interact with through remote viewing or any kind of modality that suits you. I've personally never tried remote viewing, but my experiences with lucid dreaming and astral projection have definitely opened me up to that idea. Sometimes accidentally. And so I hope to get into that some more. I think we should definitely follow up on that and maybe do
Yeah, absolutely.
a
And
whole
it's
episode
nothing
on that.
crazy because it's things that you do normally.
Right.
But all it is saying, okay, well, so if you do have these abilities, here's a protocol, a set of things to do, a way of thinking that allows you to get a result. And it's very simple. It's focus your mind and clear it so you have nothing in your mind, because the enemy of this is perception. It's your ideas. I've done, I'll give you an example. I did one where I thought I saw something like a plastic bag in like the ocean. And, I'm seeing this like, thing, and I'm trying to describe it. So I'm like describing a plastic bag. But the problem is I'm describing a plastic bag instead of describing the shape. And it turns out that the target for the episode was like a hot air balloon over the ocean. And so it's like it's the exact same thing. But if I said it's this, no, you're completely wrong. So when you're looking at this information, it's being impartial. So it's clearing your mind, focusing on a time, a very specific place. It doesn't even have to be a target. That's the real trick to it. If you want to start even thinking about it, and when I read Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, he talks about sitting in a dark room and like focusing on people and trying to experience a person's consciousness. And well, I'm like, well, that's kind of like remote viewing a person. It's remote viewing this information at a specific place. You just have to know very specifically what you want to look for and where, and keeping your mind open to it. And yeah, everybody has. And that's the basic concept. Research online. Hit a couple tools and protocols. There's some really good magazine out there called 13 Martinis that you can look up. We'll give you a deep dive into it. It's like a bi-yearly publishing. Highly recommend that.
13 Martinis. Sounds pretty
That's what it's
cool.
called. Let me
Nice.
double
Yeah,
check.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
called 13 Martinis.
Cool. All right. Well, that was fun. And I think, as we're approaching the halfway point, I appreciate what's been said so far because, as I expected, we've hit on so many different topics already. So it's cool that, this was not really like planned out. I didn't send you guys these questions like ahead of time. I sent them like 10 minutes before. So we have been able to have some spontaneous magic happen in this Zoom call. So I'm happy for that. And for number 5, Bill, we've got a similar question to the $100 purchase, but this one is just in general. What is the most worthwhile or best investments you have ever made and why? And it doesn't have to be money. It could be an investment of time or energy, anything in that regard. What would you say is the most valuable investment you've ever made?
So I guess you could say my answer is super general, but I would have to say my bachelor's degree. And I know that college isn't for everybody. And certainly my degree didn't do me any favors, believe me. Like I majored in philosophy, right? So my current day job has absolutely nothing to do with philosophy. So, but what it did do is I think it helped me get my current day job.
Hmm.
I was kind of headhunted. I just had it out on Indeed actually, and my current employer found me. But I feel like had I not had that as a prerequisite for my to put on my resume, right, they probably would have skipped over me. But it is something that companies look for. I'm not saying they verify if it's true or not, but they definitely look to see if it's on their potential employees sheet of paper, right? So yeah, that would be mine, just in the most practical sense, because it has, I mean, it's paid off.
Oh, good, good. Yeah, and it's funny that, that's not like maybe I don't know what your particular job title is, but it's funny that philosophy will play a role in any kind of career. And it's funny that it was definitely a standout item for yourself that this recruiter saw and was like, wow, okay, that's someone who will be able to think critically in times that aren't so clear. And so I think it's really cool. I don't hear many people speak about their college experience other than like the fun, but like I'm glad that you're speaking about it with gratitude because I feel the same way. And the financial burden sucks, but I'm really happy that you got something positive out of it. It's really cool. Adam, what would you say is your most valuable investment of time, money, energy? What would you say?
Yeah, I would probably say Studio One. If I'm talking about like just there one piece of software that has really influenced and changed me, and highly, highly, highly recommend that to anybody that's into music producing or even podcasting. It is professional music software, but thankfully, you can now get it for like $16 a month, which sounds like a lot of money, but when you consider that back in the day to buy the program with everything was a $300 investment,
Mm.
and every time a new version would come out, you would have to, if you wanted to upgrade, buy the new one. And now free upgrades all time. I don't know. It seems like the best thing ever, and it's been a core tenet of my podcast producing and abilities. So, yeah, Studio One,
Right on.
and
Have
then
you been
obviously all the energy that goes
recording?
into podcasting around that,
Oh,
flows
yeah.
right into that same central thing. But I could not have done it. I started off using, Audacity, which is incredibly powerful, but the UI on it is just works against the way that I think. And coming previously from that in GarageBand, so angry with Apple. But
Mm.
that's a different story.
Humble beginnings. Yeah. Have you been recording any music lately? Just kind of jamming for fun. What's been going on with music in your
I
personal life?
have. I've been testing stuff out. I have some really old stuff that I've done for podcasts, but with Bill here, looking to create another, it's got me into the music producing. So yeah, no, I've been dabbling around back in Studio One, running some loops through. Um, So yeah, no, I've absolutely been doing that, and that's the cool thing. Not to be a commercial for Studio One, but once you get it, you get all the plugins and tools and loops, and just as an example, once you get it, you can watch a video on The Killers. I think it was somebody told me that you had a boyfriend that looked like a girlfriend. That song, somebody told me, produces the entire song within Studio One, so you can see just how it's done. So
That's pretty
yeah,
cool.
it's an incredibly powerful tool. So yeah, if you're into music producing, yeah, mine don't sound that good. I
All right. Well, that's it's fascinating. It's funny, I use Audacity and this free program for video editing called DaVinci Resolve, and it's pretty fun. But I know I'm scratching the surface on the potential
Oh,
if
listen,
I,
Audacity is amazing. It has
yeah,
every single thing that you could ever need.
yes, it is
Um,
clunky though. I agree with you. It's funny.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if you
Well,
ever want to learn, hit me up. I'll teach you.
I would love to. Yeah, I've been doing video edits. Always looking for clients and I'm trying to get better. Hopefully I can film my own footage too. I've been using a lot of stock footage and AI art that's available on places like Instagram. But anyways, yeah, it's been fun and I'm glad that you've shared two very different answers. So this is pretty interesting to consider. And as we go to number 6, this one's fun. What is an unusual habit or an absurd thing that you love? What would you say, Bill?
I really like this question. Um, I think absurdism itself is kind of interesting thing that I don't know if I love it, but I definitely like learning more about it. I think that the idea of trying to get a point across using absurdism is fun and unusual. But I guess I don't know, more on a serious level. I don't know, serious. Chicken and waffles isn't serious, is it? Um, I would say being healthy is unusual nowadays, right? So I just started a workout routine, and for my birthday, actually, in last November, I started on my birthday, so it was my gift to myself, kind of. But yeah, so that's been a new habit I've been forming. It's been working with Todd Cave. He's been along the he's been around the podcast circuit a while. He just recently spoke on air at Anarchapulco, I believe. So great guy. I love working with him. So creating that new habit, I guess you could call it unusual because it just seems like the majority of Americans are still obese, right? I don't know.
Well, I'm
That's
happy
my
for you that you decided to invest in the exercise. And for the unusual part, I can definitely relate. If you're making certain dietary choices or avoiding certain things, socially it could seem absurd. Like if you go to someone's birthday and you're like, "Oh, I'm not gonna have any cake because I don't want to feel crappy the next day," and it's like, "Whoa, that's so offensive! How dare you not eat birthday cake?" It's like, "Whoa, okay, easy there." But no, it's pretty cool. I appreciate that you stick to your guns on that. And yeah, it might seem absurd to others, but it's important nonetheless. So I respect that greatly. Adam, what is an unusual habit or an absurd thing that you love?
Yeah, I'm pulling right from the question, and that is what Bill said. It's absurdism. Uh, uh, I grew up very luckily reading Christopher Durang, the playwright, as a young person, and he's one of the few true absurdist writers. Baby with the Bathwater sticks out to me as one of the most absurd things that I read, and it's highly offensive. His writing is always highly offensive, no matter who you are. It is absurdism to the extreme, and I love having that perspective because as crazy as the world is getting and as bad as things are, it's like this is like Running Man is no longer a farcical movie. It is a tale coming true. It's like Idiocracy. Like, you watch them now with a new perspective on the past, and you can only laugh because we're getting a free ride to the most absurd thing. And if you cannot laugh at how stupid and crazy everything is, then you're going to go insane. So, yeah, absurdism in itself.
I love that. Yeah, Idiocracy and The Matrix are my two favorite documentaries. You know what I
Documentaries, that's right.
mean? Yeah, right on. Yeah, it's good to laugh it off. That's the only way we can get through this for sure. But at the same time, comedy is what makes this such a rich and rewarding experience. So I appreciate any absurd point of view, especially if it points to something true or that I find to be true for myself. So it's pretty fun. Now for number 7, lucky number 7. In the last 5 years, what new belief, behavior, or habit has most improved your life or your lifestyle? Adam, you want to start with that one? A new belief, a new habit, or a new behavior?
Yeah, I would probably just say diet. Really, really focusing on not putting garbage in, reading all of the ingredients. pretty militant about it, finally realizing that there's a direct correlation between so many different foods and how I feel and headaches and all these other health effects that, yeah, I'm a militant reader, if it's got more than 6 ingredients, probably not going to be eating it. And if I do, there's only like 2 or 3 products that I ever stray from. And, when Gatorade is like the worst thing on my list, then I feel like I'm doing pretty good. But otherwise, it's like, almond butter, jams made with like pectin, sugar, lemon juice, and cherries. So yeah, that's pretty much my diet: eggs, meat, and that's had a huge impact on my health and how I feel.
Right
So
on.
just
Right
eating whole
on.
foods.
I always tell people if you can't pronounce it, don't eat it.
Oh,
That's a helpful one
No,
too.
I'm
Yeah.
absolutely terrified when I look at the foods and the things that people are eating. And even the things that you think are healthy, you're like, oh, look, it's almond butter, but it's got palm oil in it. It's like, oh, this is this wonderful product, but we've got, what am I trying to
The
think of?
seed
Canola
oils, the
oil. Exactly.
polyunsaturated fatty acids.
Yeah, hydrogenated, and it's like, okay, well, it's awesome and it's creamy and it doesn't melt, which means that it's sludge inside of your body. So yeah, like you literally are what you eat. Like one of the most sought after bears is a blueberry bear, a bear that when you shoot it in hunting has been feasting on blueberries, and it has a blue color to its meat. It has an aroma, and never had it before, but it's supposed to have a wonderful taste. And then you go, okay, well, if just eating blueberries affects you that much, then what happens if I'm only eating, XYZ garbage, chemical, artificial flavor? My favorite's natural flavors. It's like, what is a natural
Oh
flavor?
God, yeah.
Spit is natural flavor,
What a deception.
Yeah, because it's like I'm looking at this product and you've got 8 ingredients and they're all super simple. And you put natural flavor. I'm like, what don't you want me to read?
Mm. It's very they're hiding something for sure. It's
Exactly.
yeah. Wow. Oh, I appreciate that. I think we can all relate to that. Being militant too is can be socially tough, or even just having the discipline to do that. But at the same time, the reward that you get reinforces that attitude 100%. So I appreciate you sharing that. And Bill, what did you think about a belief, habit, or a behavior that has benefited you a lot recently?
That would be gratitude. Absolutely 100% gratitude. I know that we talk about it a lot and maybe too much, not too much. You can never talk about gratitude too much, but I know that it can come off as superficial because it could sound like entering in the state of gratitude and just trying to carry that forward is that's where the challenge is, right? Anybody can sit for a second and think of 3 things to make them happy, right? But then it's taking that lens and trying to see the rest of your day through that is something that's been a huge impact for me.
Yeah, man, right on. That revamps your entire nervous system. Like I remember driving recently, and someone cuts you off and you feel like this pressure bubble up in your chest, and you want to get angry and like maybe tailgate them or honk at them or flip them off, and then you can return to a state of gratitude, and it will bring you back to homeostasis. And on that as well, I found this cool tweet thread. It was like, name something that's better to do while you're sitting in a sauna than scrolling on your phone. I was like, wow. First of all, I want to go into a sauna because that sounds awesome. But second of all, what I decided to write as a response, just feeling like I was being clever, was count your blessings, and I put the infinity emoji after that. And, it made me feel pretty good to put that out there. So I'm glad you brought that up, and I think you can never talk about gratitude too much. I agree. It's a state of existence that is going to benefit everyone around you, including yourself. So I think it's helpful to remember that, especially when times get tough, for sure. Count your blessings. Numero ocho. What advice would you give to a smart, driven college student about to enter the real world? And what advice should they not listen to? So the first part is, what advice would you give to that college student? Second part, what should they throw away? Adam, you want to start?
Yeah, the first one was everything happens in cycles, and nothing is new. Everything is just being redone in a different way. Very specifically, just because when I grew up, I used to think like, oh, we're going through where we used to have more of a puritanical way of thinking and things you couldn't talk about, and it's going forward. And now the things that you can't say on podcast, that you can't say dead, dying, death, these weird things in normal conversation that I just it is not the place that I thought society was going to. And then I go, oh, well, if you look throughout history, this has happened before. And so, so now it's taking me, till, probably 35 years now, 40, to really start to realize that you see enough things start to repeat and you can look back at history and you go, okay. So yeah, I'd tell people to, just realize that is a fact and that is going to help you navigate the world better. As for what I would throw out, I would say that most people really need to just kind of focus on what they feel is right. When it comes to, what is right and wrong, most human beings understand, doing right and doing wrong. But, when you pay attention to what your friends are doing and you let that influence come in, or the corporation, as soon as you beholden yourself to something else, that, people do a lot of bad things all the time. So yeah, just try to throw all that out. And if it feels genuinely like you're doing the right thing, then, keep doing it unless you're hurting other people, because you're probably right.
Absolutely, man. You reminded me of one of my favorite classes. It was called Morals and Ethics. And it was interesting because we speak about how, I'm going to make a blanket statement, forgive me, but human beings should be born with like a natural moral sense, a moral compass, that it's wrong to hurt others. It's good to help others. And this is a natural, like, divine spark within us, which makes us human. But it's the ethics that are shaped by culture. And, you could be in one culture and the ethics say it's okay to be a cannibal, or it's okay to eat this animal, or it's not okay to do this, it's not okay to do that. It's our cultural ethics that shape our behavior. But in baseline, like the hardware that we're all born with, as these human flesh creatures, we all have that moral compass. So that's really interesting. You should follow that inner voice. It's kind of like when you brought up the billboard idea, follow that magic or find your own magic. It reminded me of Joseph Campbell saying, follow your bliss. I think
Yeah.
that's solid advice. I definitely related to that a couple years ago when I was still a student. So I appreciate that. And Bill, what would you say for yourself as a, because you brought up college earlier, so that's going to be interesting to think about. If you were talking to a smart, driven college student who's about to finish school and enter the real world, what would you say, and what should they not pay attention to?
So at first I was gonna answer with stay out of the cities, which I still think is a good piece of advice. But I really like what Adam said, and it made me think about following the path with the heart that has a heart, and that's something I read in Carlos Castaneda's writings. So yeah, if don't go, chasing credentials or whatever, or money. Like do what feeds your soul, because that's what you're gonna end up with after retirement. Hopefully, if you get to retire, right? And then what advice should they ignore? I would say don't avoid avoid distractions. Like have a purpose, right? And keep that purpose in front of you and be driven, and don't get distracted, because once you get distracted, you're drifting, and anything can be a distraction, right? And so we want to avoid drifting, I guess, would be something they should ignore. Anything that which does not contribute to the purpose which they have chosen for themselves.
Right on. Well, I definitely visualize like a Sagittarius type of figure, an archer who has to, you gotta be aware of your target and you gotta know what you're aiming for. And if you don't have a clear target, then how are you going to know if you're succeeding or not? So yeah, it's good to stay focused, have a minimal distractions with a clear target. That's awesome advice. I appreciate that.
It's a sin to miss your mark.
Yes, yes, hamartia. All right. So we've got three more questions here. And for number 9, it says, what are bad recommendations you typically hear in your profession or area of expertise? So I invite you both to think, obviously, the three of us, we make podcasts, and that might be our area of expertise, or, this hobby that we have, or whatever you might consider it to be. But other areas of life, as like your profession or maybe things that you're really interested in. Of course, you're welcome to speak on podcasting, but I'm curious, what is bad advice that you usually hear in your line of work? And Adam, what would you say?
Yeah, I'd say that this is more along a philosophy that I have. I pride myself on being a very good judge of character. I had very good success rate doing interrogation with cases and just understand. I took to the book note. I almost mentioned the Wicklander book. Wicklander Zawiski is an interrogation process that is incredible, and understanding that people will tell you the truth and justify it and give you the information, and that you never want to force somebody to tell you something. You don't want to make people in your life do anything. And I do customer service now. So, a lot of it is in just presenting things in the proper way and the right choices, and just understanding that you don't have to try to force the world to be willed around you, that in the way of, magic words and spells, that you can frame things properly and present things to the people and the world around you so that they understand them in a way where they choose to make a decision that is in line with you, but you're helping them see what you're trying to allow them to see and find it to be mutually beneficial. So, yeah, it's just that, uh, don't try to force things. Try to understand that, give people options, even the bad options. Once they realize, well, here's the one option, but if I know here's the bad option and the good option, well, now I feel better with my decision. And now I understand the perspective. And now, at the very least, if you're going to be forced into this situation, I can at least make you feel better about it and maybe even be happy that you're in that situation. So, yeah, you can take, as example, I had many times when I would, be ending a case and somebody would be going to jail, or, losing their job and having, terrible repercussions, but having somebody thanking me or crying, um, because the experience was not a bad experience. It is something that they wanted to bring forward. And so, yeah, just when you start to understand that, you can really, not, it's still a negative situation in that example, but you can really make it be, the idea that, nobody loses the argument, that at the end of the day, we both feel like it was fair, and we both feel like, we still have something. So yeah, try to interface with the world that way. Because if you don't, then you're going to be fighting the ocean and you can't do it.
Yeah, that goes back to the idea of catharsis. And especially when you can share that feeling of catharsis as a group or, as a team, that's a great way to organize. And I feel like it's funny that Taoism has been coming up a lot from you lately. And you talk about not forcing the woo way. And, when you speak with someone, of course, like you can really press them and get those answers out of them. But if you allow them to feel comfortable, then like all will be revealed naturally. So I think those are wonderful points to make. And I think it's a really motivational message as well, that, if you want answers or if you want to build a relationship with someone else, then you really just have to put yourself in a state of ease and then allow information to flow back and forth between the two of you. So it's just a helpful message for me for sure. I appreciate you saying that. And Bill, the same question, with a bad recommendation, what came up for you when you thought about a not so good advice that you typically hear?
So I don't really have a good answer for this one, but I guess I could tie it into the uh back into my earlier answer about getting divorced, right? So if anybody comes along and says that they have, like, if you meet the Buddha, who said this quote? Who, if you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him.
I know Alan Watts says that a lot,
There you
but
go.
it comes from, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I would just say, if someone says claims they have all the answers, they probably don't.
Yeah, and that ties right back into Lao Tzu. He's saying like those who know don't speak, and those who speak don't really know. And that's an awesome reminder. There's a lot of charlatans out there, but at the same time, it's good to speak with your friends and your tribe and your family, but to always be in a state of like perpetual divorce, almost. I use that phrase ironically, but it's like not getting too much tunnel vision and being able to pivot and look around. It's like what Adam was speaking about. Having a holistic view is very crucial. And it's been helping me a lot lately as well. Thinking about career changes and things like that, looking at all sides of a decision or a person if you're going to evaluate them. And for number 10, numero diez. In the last 5 years, what have you become better at saying no to? So they've have a couple examples on this list. You could be saying no to distractions, invitations, and when you think about the process of saying no, what new realizations and or approaches have helped you to make this decision to say no? What would you say, Bill?
First thought that came to my head was alcohol. I stopped drinking in 2020, basically when everyone did the exact opposite, which I thought was interesting. But that really new realizations. I mean, it really shows you what your social relationships are built around, and yeah, so that's been a huge growing experience. And any tips? Yeah, there's no uh, good alcohol. It's all poison. So, I'm not saying that. I think I was just having this discussion with my wife the other day. Like, alcohol is it's such an old technology, really. Like, this is a science that has survived cataclysms, right? Like, so
Yeah, it has, but at least, for modern times, you didn't have the distillery.
true.
So, as soon as you can distill, now you're into super high potency as opposed to much weaker 6, 9, 14% high end, wines, as opposed to being able to make grain alcohol 200 proof. That would be the big change in technology that I think has really negatively impacted man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, probably. I would say that contributes. And then just the whole idea of like them being spirits too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Having a
Yeah. You become a
blackout
different
and
person. It makes some people completely different. It makes you a different person. And yeah, I don't want to tell people it's a good experience, but once you've experienced it, yeah, you start to realize that there's a certain amount of the plants in the process made me into something different.
Yeah, it's an alchemical reaction, and it goes back to the idea of being possessed as well. Like you see someone who's drunk, and they're not themselves, and they're being driven. Like you guys ever see? I know it's SpongeBob SquarePants, and he's got like plankton inside of him, and
Yep.
he's like
Yep.
controlling him, like he's the homunculus or something. And it's yeah, you completely transform. So Bill, that's amazing, and I'm inspired. I mean, I haven't had a drink in a while. My brother got married last year. I think well, yeah, I mean it's like funny to think about the relationship. Maybe when we're younger, it's more of a crutch, and then you kind of grow out of it and you realize that there's a much better way to interact with your own spirit, and why invite foreign spirits when you have so much within you that can be entertaining, or whatever reason you're gonna drink. But yeah, for sure, I appreciate that very much, and I'm proud of you, man. That's badass. Adam, what do you think? If you have a certain thing that you say no to, a distraction, an invitation, what has helped you say no to this? What have you learned from that experience?
Yeah, I would say I would stretch myself too far socially. Sometimes I'm feeling obligated to do events. Getting reined in that, just been a lot of, personal health and, responsibility issues in life that have just kind of reined me in a lot of ways where it just kind of forced me to focus on, the important things and realizing that, I do need some padding and some free space and some time. And as much as it hurts, not cutting people off, but not seeing people or engaging in social events, just realizing that, there's a negative, dramatic negative side to that, but sometimes you can't extend yourself in all directions because that's even worse. So yeah, I would just say that I have managed to just prune in my feeling obligated is probably the word to do social things. In other words, um, when the time is right, I am fully willing, but being very pragmatic. In going, well, if I do this, 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 and this, then I get no sleep, and the next 3 days are going to be okay. Monday's going to be terrible. Yeah, I can't do it.
Hmm. Yeah, it goes back to that birthday cake thing. It's like you can make that decision,
Mhm.
but if you're learning to say no to it, then you're also making a decision that has an effect on tomorrow and the next day. And I know in 2020, I started to learn about Saturn and like the archetype of Kronos and Saturn, and how, Saturn is usually seen as something evil, but like when you think about time and how we deal with time and how time deals with us, I go back to that quote from Knights of Sidonia by Muse. It's like, don't waste time or time will waste you. And it makes me think of the fact that, like, if you want to master time, then you have to be willing to have the discipline. And I love what Jocko Willink says, discipline equals freedom. That's someone who wakes up early to work out every day. So he's definitely mastered time, and, he's very successful for that. So, awesome answers, you guys. And, we're about to hit the last question. And I think just before we hit this last question, I want to thank you guys sincerely. This has been a lot of fun. And I feel like going back through this episode will be interesting because, for a number of different reasons, but we have the three of us, we've been able to share a lot of cool insights. And I love jumping around to different topics like this. It's really fun. It's free flowing at the same time, but also, I like this a little bit of structure. My shows are not usually structured like this, so I appreciate you guys bearing with me as I do this for the first time. But for number 11, when you feel overwhelmed or unfocused or have lost your focus temporarily, what do you do? And what questions might you ask yourself? Bill, what would you say?
Okay, so I actually have two answers for this. The first one will be the truthful answer, which is smoking cigarettes, right? That's my immediate thought that came up. But the second question, which I'm working towards, it would be breath work, right? Both have to deal with your lungs and breathing and taking a little moment to slow down and find your center again. Um, I'm currently still a tobacco smoker. So I've tried the whole vape thing and stopped for various reasons, but I would say that I'm trying. I need to do a better job of being more mindful to transition away from that. Although I do, is an argument to make that it is somewhat beneficial
Yeah, I
in
mean,
the
do
light
you
of
roll your
some.
own?
No, I don't.
I would
Which,
recommend that as
yeah.
I roll one up every night and that's it. I don't crave them all day. I just have my routine. I do one a day or one every night, before I have dinner. And then after dinner, I go to bed, and that's that. But that's just me. And I appreciate, because the breath work is crucial there. And that's a great way to regulate yourself if you feel overwhelmed. But I definitely see, and I've experienced this too, as more of like becoming addicted to nicotine, is having that feeling of overwhelming anxiety almost. And it's the perfect tool for that. But I definitely recommend getting loose tobacco and papers, roll one up every night, maybe before dinner, after dinner, whatever suits you, and see how that feels. But that's just my 2 cents. Is there anything else you wanted to finish on? I didn't mean to cut you off, Bill.
No, I like that idea because when I first started, I was smoking, right? I was very mindful, like this isn't really supposed to be a good thing, right? So there was a time where I could do like just a morning or just an evening, and it's got out of control. So thanks for the encouragement. I'll probably.
Yeah, I mean, I found that as soon as you start,
Hmm.
it's harder to stop. So like waiting till the evening when you've gone through your entire day, your neurochemicals have gone through. I mean, I drink coffee and all that, so like I'm still ingesting some kind of stimulant, but yeah, waiting till the evening helps cut down on like the craving, which, even if I miss a night, it's not a big deal, right? It's not like too much of a dependence, but it's kind of like more of a ritual. That's how I try to reframe it. Because you're right, the tobacco is very spiritually renowned, and it's considered anti-parasitic. So if you're talking about spirits, I mean, I think there's a reason why people who drink alcohol also say like, "Oh, I love smoking when I drink, because it protects you from maybe invasive spirits." Maybe that's just my woo-woo esoteric view, but I think the shamans who have used tobacco for centuries might have something to say about that. Not that I'm a shaman, but I like learning about it. So it's my 2 cents there.
Yeah, to add to that too, I recommend getting your own tobacco leaves. I used to do that to buy, large pieces of, leaf, organic, and I would just with a pair of scissors do my own stripping, cutting up, and rolling up. especially when you're buying everything, that has tons of different chemicals, clays to make them, increase the weight so that they're, technically a sigillaro so that they have less, like the amount of chemicals and things that they're putting into those. Plus the fact that, yeah, it does matter what kind of fertilizer that they're using on it. If it's an organic, what they're actually feeding it with, because, tobacco picks up heavy metals and pulls and leaches uraniums and arsenics and things from the soils. And if you're using low grade, name brand, miracle products out there, they're going to be infiltrated. So the cheaper stuff is not the better stuff. So yeah, it's a nuanced path.
Very nuanced.
Interface with nature at your own level, try to keep the big corporate companies that want to make you more addicted, that are putting in, thousands of different chemicals that you just don't know what's in there.
Mm-mm. Yeah, right on, right on. Well, if you feel overwhelmed and unfocused, maybe tobacco isn't something that you reach for. Maybe it's something else. Adam, if you're okay, well, actually, before I ask you, I want to comment, Bill, on the breath work. Do you find that it's difficult to remember to do like a deep diaphragm breath? Because I think, like the deep breathing throughout the day is something really helpful. And do you have like a way to remind yourself, like, or do you ask yourself a particular question that prompts you to do some exercises like that? Do you have any ideas on that?
So I read a book by Yogi Ramachakara called The Science of Breath. It's a very short book. It's only 88 pages, and there's a chapter in there, towards the beginning, where he pretty much berates Westerners for breathing through their mouth and for not breathing properly. So, which involves your diet. You breathe from your diaphragm up, basically, right? So, um, after reading that, it's not that it's not that hard to remember, just because he's just so condescending about it, right? It's kind of funny. But yeah, there's some good exercises that he gives in that book, which I try to remind myself to do every morning. So yeah,
What's the book title one more time?
Science of Breathing.
The Science of Breathing. Very cool.
Oh, sorry, Science of Breath. That's right.
Science of Breath.
Yeah,
Oh, nice. It's a
very
nice little book there. Yeah.
yeah.
Cool. Well, yeah, I mean, maybe we all need a stern talking to be like, hey, don't be a mouth breather, my friend. You don't want to end up like, uh, well, I'll just leave it there. Adam, we have one more question. When you feel overwhelmed or unfocused or have lost your focus temporarily, what do you do? And what helpful questions might guide you to fix this problem?
Yeah, although I love Bill's answer, usually to me it's the opposite of, if I'm feeling overwhelmed and unfocused, it's trying to find myself focused and not thinking. So as a kid, it used to be, video games or Legos. I would try to get super focused and into one thing. Nowadays, it's usually hopping on to, Xbox and playing, Halo or something like that, where I can just get myself, really just into highly focused moments and things. And it's funny because I for a while was considering that to be like a negative impact. Like what am I really doing, in this moment? It seems like a waste of time. But I have noticed that like my typing speed and, the ability for me to focus and look at different things has drastically increased, so it's affecting my, mental abilities and snappiness in different ways. And, from that aspect, I kind of gave into it a little and started to say, as long as I'm, not wholly focused on this for the entirety of the day, there's actually benefit that's coming out of it. And, shame on me for wanting to assume that nothing good would come from it. So yeah, I don't know. So at least when I'm focused and playing, my goal is in the back of my mind. It's not just having fun; it's getting better, and it's looking at every situation and scenario, and just having that internal focus is beneficial. Because then after I get out after an hour or two, I feel really amped and ready to do other stuff.
Sorry, I had myself muted there. It's awesome. I was about to say, you guys are both out of the proverbial hot seat now, as you like to say at the end of your interviews. And this has been fun. I appreciate once again the structure. I don't normally do this, so it's fun to have something to fall back onto. And I think, just as I've been saying repeatedly, this has been a cool variety of different insights, and we've touched on a lot. So I don't know what I'm gonna name this episode. It's gonna be fun to ask the my etheric muse to help me with this. But I appreciate you guys immensely, and I wanted to ask you: is there any kind of announcements or promotions or plugs that you want to give our wonderful audience before we say farewell today?
Well, when is this going to come out?
I would say this. On Monday, which is so right now we're at February 18th. So Monday, February 20th, I will premiere this on YouTube in the evening. And I can also wait to upload the audio on the same day, but I usually put out the audio first and then premiere it on YouTube a few days later. So,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, how about we do this? We do have a big announcement. I guess I'll tease it here a little bit, but 13 Questions will be releasing an episode within the next few days also. And so we'll have the full details on that episode. If listeners want to just look out for the next 13 Questions episode, we have some updates regarding future hosts and future projects that Adam and I will be involved in. So there are uh, things are progressing and evolving, and there's opportunities out there to be had and taken advantage of. So let's just, I don't want to give out too many details, but yeah, head on over to 13questionspodcast.com and look out for the new episode coming out probably tomorrow, but Monday by the latest.
Right on, gentlemen. Adam, any last thoughts or words of wisdom for our lovely listeners?
No, I'm a true believer in what I said before, find your own magic. Bill talked about 13 questions. I had a podcast I did on remote viewing called Cat in the Box. Haven't done it for a year. Got plans to be diving back in here in the near future through a bunch of wonderful circumstances with my co-hosts. So I'm excited to get back into that. But no, uh, experiencing stuff like that has been a game changer. And if you don't have anything in your life that conventionally people around you don't believe in, that science tells you shouldn't be real, try to find one of those things, try to experience it, try to focus back on, your previous experiences, things that you might not have, thought of as paranormal. Talk to most people and ask them, have you ever had a paranormal experience? No, 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 no. Okay. Well, have you ever seen a light in the sky that you can't explain? Have you ever heard a voice that's giving you information that was useful? Have you ever had a premonition? Have you ever thought about somebody calling you before they did? Go down the line. Did you, experienced a loved one coming back to you, seeing, a light that was spiritual? These questions, any one of those, a large portion of people will answer yes to, and then they go, oh yeah. So think about your own life, try to find that magic and prove it to yourself. And then you can start focusing on where you want to go in the world and how to perceive it, and not what's being told to you is possible. Because I'm a true believer that we're living in a domain of pure information with infinite possibility. And the only difference is it's where are we from now and where can we go? Because the cell phone in your pocket, the TV screen in front of you, it's an amalgamation of the earth. Somebody at some point in time had a dream, an imagination, a thought, a bit of creativity, and through working together, through thinking, and all we did was think and move our bodies in a different way, we took the stuff out of the earth and we turned it into this experience that we're having. So whether you can, communicate telepathy with somebody throughout the forest, when you're truly focused on yourself, or you can do it through a Zoom call, across the world, there really is no difference, and don't believe that, one is the only way it can be done.
I can feel the magic today, my friends. I'm grateful for both of you, and I'm looking forward to doing something else in the future. And I think we have a lot more to discuss just from this last hour or so. So I'm looking forward to following up. And I want to leave everyone with a thought. I was just inspired. This is a quote from Alan Watts that has been used in a cool song. What's the guy's name? Akira the Dawn. He's put together this cool Alan Watts album. So the quote goes like this: I wonder what you would do if you had the power to dream any dream you wanted to. With that, my friends, I wish everyone happy days, health, wealth, and prosperity, and I'll talk to you soon. Peace.